I've seen a lot of arguments on social media. In fact, on this Facebook page, I've seen a lot of people arguing about what truly is a false nine. Is a false nine a striker, or a false nine is someone who pretends to play as a striker? I've seen all of that coming from Combo and some other people try to argue, and he has tried to make points, try to give his own opinion on how you understand what actually a false nine is.
A false nine is not a striker. Yes, a false nine is not a striker. Now, the term false means not true, right? Opposite of true is false. It's simple English language. A false doctor is not a doctor. A false nurse is not a nurse, right? Anything that you put false in front of it cannot be it. So a false striker is not a striker. The position of a false nine is not the position of a striker. A false nine is a make-believe nine. So if a false nine is a player that you put in the number 9 position, but does not play in the number 9 position. That is why it's called a false nine. So you coming out to make an argument that Messi played as a striker, and your only basis of the argument is the fact that you are bringing out formation to show that Messi played as a striker, is a very, very weak argument.
Now, I've seen a lot of people come to counter him, but we all have our opinion on how we understand what a false nine truly is. Now, let me give you my own opinion about a false nine and a striker. There's a difference between a striker and a false nine. These two, they are different, but they play similar role. They are two different things, but they play similar roles. Now, let me explain what a false nine is. A false nine is a player who is assumed to be a striker. A false nine is a player who takes up the role of a striker to play as a top nine, to play. But this guy is not truly a striker. He's not truly a top nine. Yes, he can be scoring goals, but that does not make him a top striker, a top nine. There are strikers and there are also strikers. Let me explain this. Now, when it comes to a striking force, we have top nine. Top nine could be Karim Benzema. Top nine could be Haaland. Top nine could be Lewandowski. Top nine can be Gyökeres, Osimhen. These are top nine. These are strikers. When you put them on the pitch, these people can play a striking role. There is no other position they can play apart from that striking position. Now, a false nine is someone who can also play as a striker and also as a midfielder or as a winger. That is what a striker is. That is in my own definition of a striker. What a striker is someone who can spearhead an attack and cannot play any other position apart from playing at that front. That is a pure striker. A false nine is someone who can play as a striker or can also play as a midfielder. In the case of Messi, that has been the subject of argument. Now, Messi is someone who can play as a striker and also as a midfielder. Messi is not a top nine. We all know this. Even when he started as a youth, at his beginning, we saw how he was transformed. When he started with Rijkaard in Barcelona team, he was coming from the wing side, from the right-hand side of the pitch. Now, at the time when Pep now came in, Pep pushed him from that right-hand wing to play as a false nine. In fact, it was Pep Guardiola about this idea of a false nine theory. This is where he managed to put Messi, because Messi is someone who can torment the defenders, the opponent defenders. That is what Messi did. It's not as if when you talk about striker, out striker, a top nine, you cannot bring Messi and put Messi in the same category with Ronaldo de Lima. I don't know if you're getting the point now. You cannot put Messi in the same equation with Ronaldo de Lima. You cannot put Messi in the equation of Lewandowski. You cannot put Messi in the equation of Luis Suarez as a top man. No. Messi is someone who can drift in from the midfield and go to strike and score goal. A striker does not mean that you're a false nine is someone who can still give you goals. Now, coming to Cesc Fabregas, who said that he played as a top nine during the final of the World Cup. Yes. When you see maybe your striker, or it depends on the formation of the coach. Coaches, we've seen coaches, sometimes they don't even play their top nine. They put the top nine on the bench, then use a midfielder to play as the attacker. We've seen that with Pep Guardiola many times. Even there was a match, I can't remember against who, Man City against one Premier League team, where we saw Kevin De Bruyne deputized as a striker. But will you now say because he played as a striker, are you going to call Kevin De Bruyne a striker? He don't do that. So someone who spearhead temporarily, can never be assumed as a striker. That's my own understanding about this false nine. False nine, to my understanding, is someone who pretends to be a striker, who temporarily take up that role, but is not seen as a striker. He might be seen as a striker in that particular game, but he's not doing the job of a striker because it's not only this guy just go in and come in and support the midfield, unlike some strikers that only base their own job is to be in that front, then score goals. A false nine is someone who can play midfield and also play attack. That's my understanding. I don't know if I'm making sense anyway. Tell me what you think in the comment section.